And now, a Market News First exclusive. OJ takes the stand. Here's Kate Delaney.
Hi everybody, Kate Delaney back again with more conversations with O.J. Simpson, and today I have a stopwatch. It's got a whistle on it. See this whistle? If you go too long, that doesn't even work, but I'll just hold up the stopwatch.
I do tend to babble.
You do. You are a storyteller, trust me. Boy, we have a lot of things to get to today. A lot of, we're going to do a word association deal where I go through a bunch of names and you give us your thoughts. Certainly people related to the trial, people you know, that kind of thing. But we want to start off this way, OJ. We did a poll here at MN1.com, and the poll question was, how has your perception of OJ changed during the week? And here's what the poll showed. Now it's 61% no. Has it shifted in a positive direction? This one, after hearing of the interviews, 61% no, 39% yes. Is that, and people can still weigh in, obviously, on the polls.
Well, that wasn't my purpose to come here to defend myself. I don't even do that anymore with the trial.
Right.
I was more interested in clearing up some misconceptions about my life. People are continually writing about me and claiming that I'm doing various things. So it's funny how it's okay to talk about me, but it's not okay for me to defend myself, against what they're saying about me.
Right.
And I think I've shown in the last couple of days, and I can show easily, that most of what you might read about what's going on in my life and what I'm doing is just not true.
Something that you brought up when we very first got on the air, you talked about the real killers, what were the possibilities, that kind of thing. And we had some street questions, and this person had a similar question, a follow-up to that.
Hey OJ, just wondering, it's been 12 years. You stated that you were going to spend your life hunting for the real killers. I was wondering if there's been any new developments in that.
Well, I talked about this yesterday, that when it was first over, that was my sentiment. Everybody said they saw me say that. I never said that. I mean, my lawyers wrote it. My son, I think, read it in a post-press, because I didn't do any of that. But that is exactly the way I felt. And I had a couple of volunteer detectives who worked for about 2 or 3 years on it, and we looked, we did things. I didn't have the money. We got stopped at every step of the road. I told you yesterday, just trying to get something as simple as phone records from the Browns. These guys had to go to court 3 times. All we wanted was the official phone records, because if you recall, Mr. Brown said that they spoke to Nicole at a time that would have been after I went to the airport. So these guys, Doc Johnson and his group, they drove the time. They saw the check from what they paid the bill, and they said they couldn't have gotten home before I would have left to the airport, right? So they wanted the official phone records that we found out were never presented in court. And I think they had to go to 3 or 4 trials to get it, and the judge always ruled against it. Now, if they were wrong, just show them the phone record. But that's the kind of opposition we got. I've always felt that you had to sit Faye Resnick down. And I know I'm repeating myself a little bit from yesterday.
Right.
Because she did her interview, and they went out to check all of these stories she told, and they found out she was lying every step of the way. And they never went back to find out why she was lying. Now, I don't know if we're going to use her name in a word association.
That's what I was going to ask you about Faye Resnick. When we were talking about the phone records and Faye Resnick, are we talking about when she was in, remember she was in a facility and she had talked on
the phone records are separate from Faye. But Faye was the one that told the most lies almost immediately, and she went out trying to recruit girls to lie with her. Of course, Nicole's best friends wouldn't go along with it. Right, and at that time, the prosecution would say to people like Cora Fisherman and Susie Kill them that her true best friends, the people that Nicole spent most of her time with, that they must not be her friend if they didn't go along with what the prosecution was saying. But Faye had something like this happen in her past. When she was in San Francisco, and when the police wanted to talk to her, she left the country. She did almost exactly what she did here. She disappeared. We had people who said that she told them that next day, if OJ didn't do it, we're all in trouble. She got kicked out of her house with her fiance. She was having a bad drug thing. She was talking about she needed money. She moves in with Nicole, and 2 days later, Nicole's dead. So I've always felt that somewhere in her world were the answers to Nicole's death.
In bringing up Nicole, you talked about how you were close and before she died, and talking to her about dates and various men and that kind of thing. I mean, this is a tough question, but do you remember, did the last conversation with you had with her was, did you have a good conversation with her?
Well, we were at my child's recital. She asked me, could I get there early, or could one of my other kids get there early to save seats? You know how tough it is at these recitals to get seats for the whole family. And she actually got there before I did and saved me a seat with her. You know, so she held my seat. So it was me, my son, her, and my daughter whenever she was coming back and forth from the stage. So we were together there, and we sat together at the recital.
Was there, I don't know why, but I don't think there wasn't a lot written about that, right? There wasn't a lot of misconceptions.
Yes, it was, big time.
In the beginning there was.
Denise Brown took the stage, and this girl, Steve Garvey's wife, who I barely know this woman.
Right.
She said I was acting strange. And,
Cindy Garvey.
And and then she made a big comment about, as if it was unusual, that I called her Nick when she was telling me she was pregnant, as if she'd never heard me say that. Well, everybody that knew Nicole well called her Nick, right? That was her name. But if you recall, they were talking about how unusual I was acting and how defensive I was acting. And I don't mean to be getting and defending all this, but you know how God works in so many strange ways. Some guy had missed his airplane going to Portland. And so he decided to spend his time, the hours he had left, filming where he went to grammar school and stuff so he could show his kids. Coincidentally, he was outside of the reception filming when he saw me. So you see me laughing with Judy Brown, laughing with Denise Brown, Denise giving me a hug, picking up the kids, you know, doing what I always do, right? After all the testimony about how weird I was acting and how I was quiet and I was strange acting, here's this footage that showed that they were all lying.
Right. I remember that. I remember how that came out.
That was to me was a small miracle.
Yeah. You talked about solitary confinement. We got some questions about that. Same place that Paris Hilton was in and had trouble with, obviously, Metro in LA.
You get the media. I recall I was in solitary confinement for 17 months, right? I never talked to another prisoner, ever, right? I told you about the Rick James situation yesterday. Well, I don't think we have to go back into that. But I know, but people would be saying that, they'd be let out the next day, the media run up to them, sometime pay them, and the guys would just make up a story. You know, make up some story that, I saw OJ and he did this, and I told him to hang in there and stuff. I never spoke to another prisoner. You know, I was in complete solitary confinement at the time I was there. So when I saw that they were staying at Paris Hilton, people were coming by her cell and stuff, I said, this is total BS. You know, and I think she confirmed that since she's been out. After,
of course, being in the solitary confinement, and there's a lot written about that, about the whole bail thing, why do you think you were denied the bail ultimately, in your words?
I think they have I think in crimes, if it's crimes such as this and two people are involved, they call it special circumstances, and I don't think that qualifies for bail.
Right. Hey, let's do some, we don't want to run out of time here. We've got viewer questions. We're going to take calls and all that stuff as we move along the line. OJ, but you and I thought we would do this. We talked about this earlier in the week. We'd do some word association. I'd go through names and you can talk about them. And this is why I have this, just in case we won't get through this list. So let's start with Mark Furman. Mark Furman, who now, by the way, draws a paycheck, of course, from Greta Van Susteren's show, News Corps, of course, and that related to what happened, his fame from the trial and stuff. Let's talk about him.
Well, it's amazing to me that this guy, that America will allow this guy to still come on TV. And I don't have anything good. God bless him that he can get it. But here's a guy that was a confirmed racist. We didn't know he was a racist. When he first came into one of our hearings, we started getting calls from women who had dated him, friends who had knew him, saying what a racist he was. And they attacked my lawyers for implying that this great cop was a racist. Well, it turns out that even the police department's psychologist said the guy was a racist. You know? And then when we found the tapes with all of these horrible things that he was saying about blacks and Hispanics, and he wished he loved this one station because it smelled like dead niggers, and he even says in there that if he saw a black man with a white woman, he would arrest him. And when the girl asked him, well, what if he didn't do anything? He said, I would make up something. You know, now they tried to say that was for a manuscript. The girl said he was serious. The shrink said that he said these things. And then when they put him on the stand, he had to plead the fifth. I mean, when does a cop plead the fifth for
Never.
lying on
Yeah.
the stand and still be hired by mainstream America? I mean, I don't get it.
Yeah, and that happened over and over again. The other
Yeah.
thing with Furman, of course, that everybody's always curious about, it was within 15 minutes he had the whole bloody glove thing.
Well, everything that happened at the house, whenever they would stump, he would disappear and then something else would show up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. You know, whatever it is, it is. I don't think. I always say I don't think these guys at that morning. I don't think he did things to try to frame me. I think they did things to try to get in my house.
Right.
You know, and whenever they were stumped, they came to the house. There was no one there. They knew I was gone. When they met my daughter, she said he was gone. The media tried to make it sound like, and when they went to the judge to get a search warrant, they say he unexpectedly took off for Chicago. Well, as everybody knows today, it was planned for a year for me to be in Chicago. The invitations for all of the Hertz clients that were there had been sent out 6 months earlier. You know,
Right.
was nothing unexpected about me
Sure,
going
and that
to
was
Chicago.
brought up in the trial, obviously.
Yeah.
Robert Kardashian.
Oh man, just a great guy, a great friend. I actually, I had a little surprise party my kids gave me a few weeks ago, and I had the good fortune of running into all the girls, you know, Khloe and Nicole and Kim Kardashian, and I ran into them at a club there, and next thing I knew, I had all these girls. I couldn't even see who they were, you know, and they always called me Uncle OJ, you know, but Bob was there for me. He was there from day one. He showed up. He was one of my oldest friends. We hadn't really spent a lot of time together in the years leading up to that because we both had our families, but he was, I love the guy, and it's unfortunate that he had to die at such a young age.
Yeah. Ron Shipp is somebody that you were close with, and then he made that
Ron Shipp would be a hard
comment.
guy for me to talk to. He wasn't as close to me as they said, and I got a lot of feelings about Ron. Ron was a guy that would show up all the time. He had a lot of substance problems. He was a former cop. He lied on the stand. The jury didn't believe him, thank God. And he was a guy that even Nicole complains, and you can ask her friends, he'd show up at her house drunk in the middle of the night. You know, he shows up at my house in the middle of the night. The week before her death, he had some broad at my house in the jacuzzi saying she was just like Nicole. Ron to me is a shaky guy. And, I will always have an eye on him.
The Los Angeles Police Department, you were really close with the LA Police Department, and then there was,
I don't know how close I was to him. Guys would drop by.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
that you were
yeah.
popular.
I've seen the guys. The guys would drop by quite often.
Yeah.
If they're driving by and they saw me, I'm popular. I was popular with everybody. It was just not the police department.
Yeah.
I was a nice guy. Ron was a police officer at one point.
Right.
And whenever he would drive by, he'd bring people by to meet me. And of course, if I'm out front, I'd talk to them and ask if they wanted a Coke or something. But you know, we see what happened at Rampart. See, people, you know, just because you can be friends with some cops, the Rampart case has happened since my case, and I find that interesting in that they just barbecued my lawyers, the media, when we were talking about the blue wall of silence and the cops framing people. Then we find out because one cop got caught, and he turned state's evidence, that they had framed hundreds of people. They had planted hundreds of pieces of evidence, and as you recall with the Rampart case that has happened since my trial, they had to let go all these convicted felons. Many of them had to plead guilty because of the evidence against them. They're public defenders. They didn't have the lawyers and the money to send an investigator out to find out if this is true. As I said yesterday, we would get these reports from the police that I'd be reading saying that this person said this happened. And I'd tell my lawyers it didn't happen. They said, well, there's a report. Then our investigator would go to that place that the police got the report and find out that guy didn't tell the police officer that. That's not what he said, you know. Well, unfortunately, that was something that was happening with so many, defendants in LA, and I think that whole Rampart stuff has proven that a whole lot of people were framed in LA to go to jail besides me.
Sure, they're doing a lot of stories actually too now.
Well, what's the show? There's a show that Michael is on.
I know who you're thinking
of.
It's
based on Furman. It's based on Rampart.
Absolutely.
Where these guys in LA were framing people.
Mm-hmm. Hey, let's jump to someone we haven't even mentioned at all during this thing yet. Cato Kalin.
Cato is, I've never had a problem with Cato until a little recently I had a problem with him because I thought Cato was a pretty decent guy when I first met him. He was living at Nicole's guest house. He was an okay guy. Nicole had to move in a hurry once, and she called me and she said, well, it's probably poor Cato. He has nowhere to go. He was renting this place. He's got to move. And I was in New York, and I said, well, you know, I had like 3 bed and breakfasts in the backyard, right? So I said, well, tell him he can stay there until he can find a place. And I think that day he moved in. I mean, I didn't live in LA. I was in New York at the time, but often I would have people, you know, some people in my neighborhood rented out their guest houses. And in the event, what happened was, I guess he stopped talking to Nicole, or he stopped helping her for babysitting, and he became her arch enemy. And I don't know why. It was somewhere, and somebody asked me about it. I said, well, the person that Nicole hated the most leading up to her death was Cato Kalin. I mean, she was so cruel to this guy. She'd come to the house and tell him he shouldn't be there. She would send horrible notes to him through the kids. When we had that picnic a few weeks that I gave for the school, my kids came in with a horrible note telling him, and he would say to me, why does Nicole hate me so? I kind of mentioned this on a show once, and then I saw him on a show right after that when they asked him about it, and he denied it. And I'm saying, wait a minute, you can ask Nicole's mother, you can ask Denise Brown, you can even ask Faye Rusnick. I mean, nobody would tell you that Nicole didn't hate Cato Kalin.
Right, but they didn't
and
bring
she
that up.
was the guy that she wanted out of my house and out of our lives more than anybody at the time of her death. Unjustly so. So I thought Nicole was wrong in her feelings, and I told him that. But outside of that, I always thought Cato was a pretty good guy.
The Bruno Magli shoes, let's clear that up, because I've gotten a lot of questions about that. Available during the civil, but not the criminal.
Because there was total BS. They sent the film over to Portugal where they invented that whole cloning. You know darn well, right now these guys can put Bruno Magli shoes on you. We had the one guy, the #1 expert on that type of clone pictures, testify and showed where they were phony shoes. You know what? I'm gonna tell you something. Here's a statistic they didn't tell you. I probably had 30-something pair, I think it was 32, 33 pairs of dress shoes. They went back through all of my bills and they found a receipt for every pair of shoe that I had in my house. The only shoes that I didn't have receipts for were tennis shoes, because they would give me tennis shoes, you know?
Right.
But every pair of shoes that I had, because I wrote off my clothes, you know, I worked in television, so I was able to write off the clothes that I bought. But every pair of shoes that were in my house, there was this receipt for. So unless somebody thought at some previous date, I said, let me buy some expensive Italian shoes so that I might commit a murder down the line. You know, I mean, just think about that. Just think about that, a receipt for every pair of shoes I had, and except for those shoes. You know, they went through all of my charge records.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's move from that, too, so we can get some more stuff in. Let's move to Howard Weissman, one of your attorneys.
Well, Howard has been disappointing. He was kind of a guy that I knew for years. He played second base when we played softball. And when I was driving on the plane coming home, actual lawyer was sitting next to me, and he heard what was going on, because I was in shock. You know, I'm trying to get back to LA as soon as I can. And he said, you better have a lawyer there. So I told my family lawyer, this guy said I should have a lawyer. He said, I'll call Howard. So when I get there, Howard is there. Now, they want to talk to me, obviously. And you know, I think everybody knows by now, you watch Law and Order or anything, you should never talk to the cops.
Right.
And never do an interview without a lawyer. But since I didn't do anything, I said, no, I'll talk to him. And they didn't want him there. I said, I don't care if he's there or not. You know, because if this will help you get me out of the way, it's great. I'll do an interview with the police. And I did a 33-minute interview with the police that most people would say he should have never done that. But in the trial, it was the prosecution that didn't want that interview presented as, you know, as evidence,
Sure.
right? So obviously I didn't do anything to hurt myself, right? In any event, a lot of people were upset that night and the next day when they found out that Weissman let me speak to the police. And the next morning I got a call, my office got a call, it was either Roger King or Michael King, since I didn't see him and I can't remember exactly which guy it was. And he was pushing, they were, you know, from King World, they were pushing Shapiro. You should have Shapiro, you should have never. So I had a meeting at Skip Taft's office. It was Skip Taft, a lawyer, Bob Kardashian, a lawyer, Kathy Randall was there. We had Shapiro on the phone, and then, of course, the King World guy on the phone. And we all came to the conclusion, okay, we got to change lawyers, but how are we going to tell Mike? So I said, well, maybe I should be the one to tell Howie, rather. How are we going to tell Howie? And Kardashian said, well, I'm his oldest friend, I got to tell him. And he was livid. And his wife, Margaret, who Bob had dated once years earlier, she called, she was pissed off, and she was livid, right? But anyway, it happened, we went forward. Here recently I saw
Paris Hilton.
Yeah, oh yeah, he was also the guy that had Paris saying all the wrong things that first day. He said all the wrong things, Paris said all the wrong things, and of course they fired him immediately and got another lawyer, and then they started saying the right things. But in any event, the only thing that disappointed me about Howard is I saw him on O'Reilly or something one night, and O'Reilly was saying, now here's a guy with some integrity, because he knew O.J. was guilty and he quit the trial. And Howard didn't say yes or no. He just kind of make it look like that was the truth. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I was pissed. You know.
We'll move on from that.
He was fired, and like every other lawyer back then, they all wanted the case.
Right.
They all wanted that
Right.
case, and you know as well as I know that
What happened?
that lawyers dream of cases like this.
That's the dream team and that and
Yeah.
whatnot. Fred Goldman, you've talked about him a bunch, but you wanted to bring him up again.
Well, you know, I've always said that if I thought somebody killed my kids, I don't know if I wouldn't be acting any different than Fred. I mean, for a while, you know, the Browns have decided to move forward and live their lives. My family has moved forward to live their lives. I haven't. I didn't commit these crimes. My kids have. I always felt that Fred's problem was he had a lot of guilt because he did not have a very good relationship with his son. Even when he had to testify in the civil case, he said that when his son needed help, came to him for help so he wouldn't have to go to jail for whatever reason, he decided to practice tough love. So he let his son go to jail. And then he had the gall, though, to say that it worked, because the next time he went to jail, he didn't even know about it until he got out of jail. I'm saying the only thing that worked, the only thing his son learned was not to go to his father for help. So when he was alive, the guy wasn't there for him. Now, you know, I never denigrate the dead. Ron probably had some trouble. Well, I know his youth and I know what he was into, but I would never let my kid go to jail, ever. You do everything you can to get him out of jail and maybe send him somewhere else and have some shrink or psychiatrist work for him. But in any event, I have always felt that when he's out there trying to get money from his child now, from the death of the child now, and the book and everything, that a lot of it, in my opinion, has to do with his guilt for how he treated his son when he was alive.
Mm-hmm. We have a question that a couple people have asked, and I was going to ask you this question anyway. This is something you can clear up. Why did Nicole leave a photograph of her bruised face in a safety deposit box? That was something.
Well, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I can tell you this: if you look, she probably hadn't been back to her safety deposit box since the night we had the thing. I know she didn't have a diary. They said she had a diary. It was absolute BS, right? Because I saw some of her therapy notes that they claim was a diary at the custody hearing, you know? And they saw all the stuff that was in there. They saw she took responsibility for our New Year's fight, you know?
Yeah, you talked about that the other day.
Her mother and her sister all went on Diane Sawyer and talked about it. Denise Brown then told the truth that Nicole wasn't a battered woman. Everybody that knew Nicole, nobody would have characterized her at that. She didn't take any crap from me. We had one fight that night. Even in our divorce, when she took the stand, in our divorce thing, she said that was her deposition. That was the only time I was physical with her. Mm-hmm. And even though I said in front of her, all the time she was physical with me after that night, she didn't dispute it. All she wanted to do was have dinner with me after I got off the stand for our divorce. Mm-hmm. So, you know, everybody talks about official stuff. I got so tired of hearing Faye Russinick said she told her this, but we have her on record in the deposition. Has he been physical with you? Yes, one time, New Year's. You know why? Because I jumped him. You know, and I did, and I owned up to it. Right. I totally owned up to it at the time.
When we come back, we'll take questions for OJ, certainly, and you can give us a call. What's the number? 866. I don't even remember the number. Something. 866. Somebody help me here. 495. What is it? 4122. And also, I wanted to get a chance to ask you about the great F. Lee Bailey. What a character he is. Yeah. So let's make sure we get that, and we'll talk about that and more coming up next here on MN1.com.
This is Market News First. News you can trust. And now, a Market News First exclusive. OJ takes the stand. Here's Kate Delaney.
All right, it's your chance to speak with OJ. You can send us IMs, that sort of thing, here at Market News First, 866-495-4122, 866-495-4122. We'll certainly take those calls. But before we do that quickly, you got to be quick on this. I'm giving you 2 minutes. I'm giving you 2 minutes. We're timing you on F. Lee Bailey. Give me your thoughts on F. Lee.
Is a great guy. I mean, it's funny, when F. Lee's name first came up by Shapiro, I didn't want him involved. I had an experience in San Francisco when Patty Hearst, they brought in F. Lee Bailey, and I thought San Francisco was a unique town. They should have hired a local top-notch attorney and not a big gun from out of town coming. I think Phil Spector made a mistake here recently with this Kunstler coming in. So I didn't really want him a part of my trial. But then he came in and met with me, and Shapiro said, no, this guy will plan it all. He looked at some evidence. He talked to Henry Lee. He came and interviewed me and talked to me about what to focus on. And I said, this guy is the greatest guy going. This guy knows what he's doing. And seriously, he was the only lawyer of all the lawyers involved that every morning that he was there, I was in the lockup. They bring you there, you get dressed, you sit in the lockup right outside the courtroom. Sure. He was the only guy that would, most times I see the other lawyers when they brought me out for the actual trial, he was the only guy that would come back there daily and talk to me. What's going on? This is what we got to do today. And everything he predicted, and he really was a captain that did the strategy that we used, and we've stayed pretty close ever since then. And him and I have even talked about getting involved in some type of show together, dealing with athletes in trouble, the law, athletes in the law, and sports in the law.
Yeah, well, you know that.
But he's the greatest guy.
That's a big deal, obviously, now with athletes. Yeah. Okay, 866-495-4122. But first, let's go to a street question. I think this has something to do with drugs.
Hi, OJ. I was just wondering, how heavy was your cocaine usage? What would you consider your average usage would be a day? And do you consider yourself completely rehabilitated?
Not rehabilitated at all, because I never had a drug problem or cocaine problem. Let me tell you something. Just look at the record. You hear that tape, that 911 tape with Nicole. What was I yelling about on that tape? Hookers and drugs. I don't want these people around my kids. More recently, with a girl I was dating in more recent years, what was I yelling about? Every time you see me in these blow-ups, I'm always yelling about people around me doing drugs. I was addicted, I won't say addicted, but the only drug that I used continuously over the years was Vioxx for my bad knees and stuff. I was a guy, and it's always amazing to me that people, I saw a thing in the National Enquirer, it was a front page story. OJ's cocaine habit, his friends, and ask any friend of mine if they ever see me do cocaine. I'm on the golf course every morning at 6:30. Ask any any guy that's involved in drugs like cocaine, would they be up at 6:30 every day of the week? And that's been for years. I'm on the golf course. But if you look at my public arguments with the media, with the police, they always was concerning me getting on somebody else's case about doing drugs, either around my kids or having it around my life at all. So see, you got duped by the National Enquirer on that one.
All right, let's move to some calls, OJ. Ty is listening to us in Texas. Hi, Ty.
Hi, great to be with y'all. This is a real honor. I just wanted to tell her, I think OJ, biggest fan in the world. I have a good reason why. It was I was about 6 years old. Real quick story. 1973 season, the magical season. Forgive me, I'm a little nervous. My mom and I are on the sidelines, and it's before the game started, and y'all are warming up. And she was trying to get my football signed by you, and she yelled juice. And I saw you coming over, but I got distracted like little kids do. And I turned around, and not only had you signed her football, but you had lanced my mother in the side of the neck with a pitchfork and signed it.
Oh, there we go. I thought he was leading up to something actually pretty decent, of course.
So funny.
Yeah.
It's just amazing that, see, the thing that we do here, and I found it curious the other day when the guy called about the 2,000 yards or murdering 2 people. And the media made such a big deal about that. You know, I listen to a guy, and there's a guy in Miami that I listen to every morning. He's the #1 drive time guy. He has to turn off about a third of his callers.
Sure.
And all of these call-in shows, they got a 7-second delay, and it probably up to 40% of their callers they have to turn off for saying stupid things like this, right? Now, we don't have a 7-second
Right, that's
delay.
part of this
So we
media
have
space.
to deal with some of these people, and then the media runs as if this is something unusual, you know. But this is
But
part of call-in radio.
Right, and this is part of internet TV,
Yeah,
why we
yeah.
say it's a free form because of the
Yeah.
lack of regulation.
Yeah.
Eddie is listening to us in Alabama. Let's try this one. Eddie.
Hello.
Hey, Eddie.
Hey, OJ, I know you and Marcus Allen used to be real good friends. How is your relationship with them now?
I don't have a relationship with him now. What happened with Marcus is Nicole at some point was trying to get my attention to get back with me. I didn't want to get back together, and because I was dealing with so many of her problems, whenever she had a problem with a boyfriend or something, it started to affect my relationship with Paula Barbieri, and Paula didn't like it. So after Christmas of '92, I guess, I told Nicole, look, if it's not about the kids, don't call me. So I literally went 2 or 3 months not talking to her. Well, Marcus was go over as a friend, saying you guys should be back together, but at the same time, he was hitting on her. And at the same time, planning his wedding at my house, you know? So his wife is at my house, Catherine was at my house planning the wedding every day, and Marcus is showing up at Nicole's house sort of hitting on her all the time. Now, unbeknownst to me or her, Nicole thought he was telling me the things that she was telling him. So I guess something happened with him, and then I had Nicole come to my house one day. It's all in the letter. Everybody knows this to be true. And told me that actually we went to dinner one night, and while we were at dinner, she started crying. I was saying you should see Catherine planning her wedding at the house. It's a lot like when you were planning a wedding. So she started crying, and I said, "What's the matter?" She says, "Marcus is not your friend." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She says, "Marcus is not your friend." And I said, "What? Did something happen between you and Marcus?" She says, "Yes." And I said, "Check. Can I get a check?" So I drove her back to where her car was, because we had actually been at a friend's funeral. And I said, "I didn't understand why you told me this." I said, "Why are you telling me this? I'm not married to you, and it's wrong, because this was certainly not something that Nicole would normally do. If one of my friends was screwing around on their girlfriend, Nicole would call her girlfriend. She even did it once when her sister got involved with a friend of mine, a famous athlete also. She called that famous athlete's girlfriend and made her sister apologize, right?"
Wow.
So Marcus came and apologized, and you know, I would have never told a story. I tell you, let me just put a little caveat to this. I'm at my trial, right? And what they're trying to do is make me this jealous, crazed guy. Even Keith Salamowicz admitted when I was there, and the next day when he saw me, I was a gentleman. When I saw them having the thing one night, right? Faye Rusnick wrote a book, and she tells this story, right? And my lawyers come to me and said, "Is this true?" And I said, "Yeah." They said, "OJ, Johnny was livid. They're trying to make you look like a jealous, crazed guy."
Well, that was part of
This
the
is
thing.
the best evidence you can have. This shows that your wife tells you this, you knows this. You still host his wedding at your house a few weeks later. And you, even after that, when you and Nicole got back together, you even took her to Kansas City to see him play, you know? But as I told Marcus, yeah, you're getting married, man. You know, I didn't feel it was my business to tell either one of them what to do.
Right.
But I did think it was wrong, because he should have told me
What happened.
what she was saying. Not what happened, the fact that she was trying to get back with me, and I wasn't aware of that at the time.
All right, let's move to Lois.
So we're not friends. I can't say we're not friends. I love him because he's, you know, I always looked at Marcus as family.
Sure.
It was funny, he never showed up at a funeral, and he tried to make it sound like that we were just passing friends.
Right.
And everybody knows
Then you were very
we
tight.
were family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lois, go ahead. Lois in Pennsylvania.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes?
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Lois from Pennsylvania.
Sure, go
Lois.
ahead.
I just want to ask OJ a question if he has a website or anything he's doing in the future. I'm a big fan of his. I love him.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think we got, what is it? I'm just starting to do that. My son has been after me to do this blog, or email, or the blog sites, and I think we got one is, what is it, guys? OJ Speaks.
Oh, here.
OJ Talks that
Sure,
we're going to start
Gmail.
doing.
Yeah,
the email, and I can't think of what the other one is. It's just OJ.
We'll get it up,
something.
don't worry. We'll
But,
give it to her.
You know, I don't know why I haven't done it in the past, because they get these cockamamie stories about me out there, and I used to be frustrated by it, and some people have often told me to get a blog.
So you're going to do it.
So you can answer. So you can answer it and let people know what the truth is, you know. So yes, I'm going to do
Okay,
that.
so we'll put that up too once we know that. Lisa's listening to us in Texas. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hi, Kate. Hi, Mr. Simpson.
Hello.
Here's my question. There was an empty Swiss Army knife box left on your master bathtub the night of the murders. I just wondered whatever happened to that knife and what made you take it out of the box and use it that night.
Well, first of all, you're wrong. It was nothing on the bathroom. I probably had in my house 70 Swiss Army knife boxes. I was on the board of directors of Swiss Army knife. But there was no particular box out there that they said. Everybody that knew me had a Swiss Army knife. Everybody, I had them made for the Buffalo Bills. I made them for the Dallas Cowboys. I had them made for everybody. I mean, that's what I did for Swiss Army knife. Of course, it's interesting that the evidence from the sheriff's department, the coroners and everything, says the type of knife that was used was not a Swiss Army knife type. It was a double-edged or something serrated kind of knife. It wasn't the type of knife that you would get with a Swiss Army knife. That, once again, was the media making a big deal out of nothing. And it was not an empty box by the bathtub. I don't know where you got that from, but I'm sure around the house there must have been 30, 40, 50 empty boxes, because I always gave them out as gifts.
Let's move to Chad, who's listening to us in Florida. Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Talking to OJ?
Yes, Chad.
Okay.
All right, we're going to let you fly, buddy. Can't hear you, sorry. Bad cell or who knows what. Brian is listening to us in Oregon. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What's my question?
Sure.
Okay, I would like to know how O.J. felt when he was found not guilty. And
Okay. You know what? I had told myself that night, and I had total confidence that I could never be convicted of this crime because I didn't do it, and I believed in the Lord. I felt if they convicted me of this crime, I might as well. I would have hung myself in my cell. I really would have. When I think of all the people involved, all my lawyers, I was the only one that slept okay that night. That morning, I got all the lawyers together in the back room. I said, when this verdict comes down, I don't want any celebrating, because 2 people have died and the killers are still out there. All my lawyers, they tell you that. That's why we were somewhat subdued when the verdict came, and the media tried to make a big deal out of that. Oh, well, look at Bob Kardashian, look at so-and-so. They don't seem to be happy that this verdict came out the way it is. It's because I gave them, everybody, explicit orders. There's be no celebrating. This is just one phase is over. 2 people are dead, and somebody is still out there who did it. So,
and along those same lines.
So I wasn't shocked. I wasn't surprised at all. I got to say I expected it. I didn't do it. I knew they couldn't convict me for something I didn't do.
So along those same lines, obviously saying what an incredible burden that it's got to be on you day to day, right? We mentioned this before. I said it was like walking around with a scarlet letter.
Yeah.
What you carry in, how heavy is your heart day after day, knowing.
Well, I was angry. It's angry. It's more than anything else. I mean, the toughest thing for me to do at that point was I saw Van Adder over there, and I felt that it was the actions of the LAPD guys that if they would have done what they should have done that day and not just focus on me, they may have solved the crime early. If they would have gone after Faye Resnick when they knew she had lied, Brian Shipp, guarantee you lied on the stand. They should have gone after these various people instead of focusing on me or trying to skew. I don't think anybody can argue that they tried to skew evidence to convict me. I mean, that whole EDTA thing proved that. When the FBI guy says, then all Marshall Clark says, then the food weed. Well, after my trial was over, they went out and they tested the theory on EDTA, the scientific community. Your body does not process EDTA. So the blood that they tested, or the various blood drops that they gave us to test that had EDTA in it, had to come out of that vial that had the missing blood. And why would they? I don't even know I'm getting to this. I didn't really want to talk about this trial. When in history does a cop take blood from downtown, a mine Ron and Nicole's back to the scene? Never in the history of jurisprudence or law enforcement has anybody ever done that. And when we found and proved that there was blood missing, we know where that blood went. But anyway, you know what? I didn't really come here to try my case, guys. You know, I'm just trying to clear up misconceptions about my life.
That's okay.
Since
You're
then.
talking about stuff that people don't know that I think they find. Some people don't know that I think they find interesting. Certainly,
it's interesting that the media never made a big deal about that. About the EDTA issue.
How did Cochran and the guys react to that? I mean, obviously they would tell you.
Johnny and them, they love the law. So one thing about Johnny Cochran, this man, he's a religious man, and he loved the law. And we had the foremost expert on blood preservatives and EDTA testify for us, saying it was ridiculous that you put that EDTA is in your system. They tried to say it did. Once we proved it was there, they went to Roger Marks of the FBI. And he came in saying he tested his own blood, and there was low levels, possible low signs of it. And we said, well, where's the data? Because the FBI, you have to keep the data if you're going to testify to something. Well, he didn't keep the data. Interestingly enough, right after my civil trial, because they used Roger Marks's evidence against me in my civil trial, the FBI had a press conference like 1 hour after my verdict. Had a press conference and admitted that their labs were skewing evidence, and one of the main people they mentioned was Roger Marks.
Wow. All right, so we'll lighten the load for you and get away from the trial for a second. Here's a question we got from an IM. Have you ever played All-Pro football on the Xbox 360?
No, I haven't.
Because that's right, you say you're not very good with the whole computer thing, right?
I haven't done that.
How about your son? He's pretty good.
Yeah, my son
stuff, right?
plays everything. My young son, one of the main reasons I'm here now is that he's really into computers. He's really into sports, and he wants to be a sports and entertainment lawyer, a manager, and I will probably end up being I'm already in some instances been his first client.
Yeah. All right, we're going to step aside, and then we're going to come back with more. We'll talk about some of the things that are currently going on that are relatable in sports and some other things as well. We mentioned this yesterday about Barry Bonds and him getting closer to that record. He's stuck. He's stuck, and they're all in Southern California. They're all watching this.
Squeezing that bat just a little too hard. Trying to get it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A-Rod, the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. He's getting crucified too by the media. Hey, we'll talk about all that and more coming up next here on MN1.com.
This is Market News First. News you can trust. And now, a Market News First exclusive. OJ takes the stand. Here's Kate Delaney.
All right, we're going to talk about a couple of different things here. We're going to go to some street questions, but first, here's a pretty pertinent question. You and I talked about this a couple of times.
Hi, OJ. I was just wondering,
what's it like for you, OJ, to be treated like a guilty man when you were found innocent by a jury of your peers?
Well, I'm only treated roundly as a guilty man by the media. Anyone who's traveled with me in the public is terrific. I finally understood what they talk about, the silent majority. I know there's a lot of people out there that, from what they heard, probably feel that I'm probably more guilty than not, but not to where it matters to them one way or the other, not where it affects their lives. I don't believe in polls. We were selling a tape once when my trial was first over, where we filmed things around my house to show about the evidence. And we found that like 1,300 calls came from 8 of the negative calls came from 8 phones.
Sure.
So it seems that the angry people they will be the people that will call over and over and over. Positive people tend to make one call and then get on with their lives. And, they're not quite as vehement about making their opinions heard.
Yeah, that's what I say about political polls. A lot of them are so skewed, and such a small majority of people. That's why, and unfortunately, though, for politicians, they go by the polls a lot leading up to things. But that's another story. All right, let's go to a street question here.
Hi, OJ. I was just wondering, what happens when the book sales hit the $58 million mark as opposed to $38 million? Will the judgment be lifted?
Hey, I wish I could have a book that could do that. No, of course it would be, obviously, but I mean, I don't necessarily see that happening. You got to understand, I had no financial interest in the book anymore. That I was paid, I was gone. My children had a financial interest in the book and the rights of the book. The biggest rights of the book was still owned by HarperCollins.
Right.
And Judith Regan and their people. I'm sure they feel like they got duped, as I said the other day, because all the people supported them, including the Browns, including my kids, supported the book not coming out, supported the Browns, the Goldman stance. And if you recall, it was immoral, it was blood money, they had no consideration of how the families feel. Well, I guess Mr. Goldman has no consideration how the Browns family feels. And I saw a little blip on TV that he says he finally feels like he's
Ron
got
justice.
And I'm trying to, justice is tied, just like before with this guy, to money. You know, it didn't take anything out of my pocket.
Yeah.
You know?
Here's kind of a follow-up deal to that. Fred Goldman's attorney, David Cook, we got a letter from him saying he wanted to know affidavits, everything else about that you absolutely are not being paid for cooperating. But
well, no matter what I do, they try to find a dollar in it. You know, and of course I'm not being paid here. We're on the air saying it, you guys are saying it, but they seem to be looking at a dollar everywhere. But trust me, I'm going to get back doing something in Florida where I do have that right to work, and I am the head of my household. And fortunately for me, they can't garnish my salaries under those conditions, and they'll try though. They'll try, but that's all right. You know, I believe if you go to court and you do what you do, I don't argue. You never heard me complain about them taking me to court for every little thing, right?
Right.
Hey, as long as it's done in the court and it's done right. I had a fear that judges, though, especially judges who have to get elected, tend to, kind of sway against the law. I believe that my daughters, them, and even in the book situation, they dotted their I's and crossed the T's, and essentially what they were told is that they can't do business with me, and that is totally wrong. That has no basis in law that my kids can't do business and do business with me. Yeah. Obviously I've been in business my whole life, and I'm trying to teach them business. But when you got to get elected, you start worrying about your election more than you start worrying about the law. I mean, we had a lady in L.A., the judge that finally ruled that I should have custody of my kids. But her ruling was based on a lawyer who was assigned to the kids by the court, what turned out to be 5 shrinks and psychologists who all, over a year's period of time, interviewing the kids, interviewing the Browns, interviewing me, unanimously came to the conclusion that these kids would be better off, and for their own good needs to be with their father. Well, where is the judge going to go after everybody that they hired independently to come up and advise the court? And when she gave me the kids, people went after, tried to get her recused, tried to get her off the bench. She turned out that she's such a good judge that was not successful. But
you worry about that.
I worry about
the
these judges are more sometimes concerned with
getting reelected. Yeah,
getting reelected.
All right, let's go to another street question.
Hey, OJ, who are you leaning toward in the next presidential election, and why?
Hillary Clinton. I love Bill Clinton. I played golf with Bill Clinton, and despite Monica Lewinsky, who was a neighbor of mine, as everybody knows, despite that, it didn't certainly keep Eisenhower, Roosevelt, or Kennedy from being great presidents because of some indiscretion. I remember him telling me, we were having beer after, him and I and a few friends, after we played golf the last time I played with him, and he was so sincere, saying that it didn't bother him when they came after him. And this was a long time ago now, but it really bothered him when they came after Hillary, because if you look at Hillary's record, her whole life, all she's ever done was try to help people. You know,
right.
She tried to help the poor, tried to help teachers, tried to help people. That's all she's ever done. And he said how it bothered him when they kind of went after her. And just for me knowing that if she needs some advice, she's got him there. You know? Yeah, she's got my vote.
She's ahead.
I don't know if I've helped you, Hillary. you probably have no chance of winning now.
Yeah, this will be a bite you'll see all over.
OJ voting for Hillary.
Yeah. She's ahead in the polls. She's climbed even further in front of Barack Obama. So she, how much of a shot do you give her?
I don't know. I'm certainly no political expert. I just know that we have to, if it's Obama, we just have to change the party. We just have to change who's up there, who's making the decision. Because I'm like most Americans right now. I'm against everything that's happening over in the Middle East.
Yeah.
How would you like to be an Iraqi now? And then I saw the other day that all the suicide bombers in Iraq that's killing the Iraqis are Saudi Arabians.
Yeah, I know.
Is that strange?
Yeah.
These are the Bush's best friends.
Right, and that hadn't been reported. Right? That's starting to come out a lot more.
These suicide bombers aren't Iraqis; they're Saudi Arabians.
All right, let's try to squeeze this in real quick. Brett in Houston, go ahead quickly.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon, OJ. How you doing?
Not too bad, and you?
Oh, I just wanted to tell you, I'm doing all right. I love the book. Great idea. Nah.
Well, don't buy it. Yeah. Hey, don't buy it. I mean, I would tell people don't buy the book. You know, I mean, I was one guy that supported. The one thing I think I supported Fred Goldman in the last 10 years was when he boycotted the book. I told Judith Reagan, I said it to her before the book was released or was scheduled to be released, certainly before it was boycotted, that I hope nobody buys it.
There you go. What a note to end on. So tomorrow, what do we do for the big finale here? There's a lot of things we can talk about, which we'll keep it a secret. Maybe that's the way to do it.
Whatever they want to talk about. Nah. What did you say? Nah. Whatever you want to talk about. Nah.
Hey, you did pretty good. I had the stopwatch. You did okay today with that. We went through a lot of things. Hey, thanks to the crew.
Maybe we can talk about sports.
There we go.
We'll talk about this coming football season.
We'll talk about a lot of different things. How's that? That's coming up tomorrow as we continue our conversations with OJ. Take care, everybody. That was good, actually.